And today we're going to have a series of brief presentations from federal agencies about early career opportunities. So we've got representatives in the room from NASA, Smithsonian, the US Geological Survey, the Department of Energy, Coast Guard, and the National Science Foundation. And I have some links from other agencies that they've passed along as well. So after our presenters speak, we'll have about half an hour for Q&A. And like I said, I'll hold questions until that period, but feel free to put them in the chat at any time. And if you'd like to remain anonymous, you can send your questions directly to me. And now I'm going to hand it over to Alex Tate to briefly speak about the IARPC Early Career Forum.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Tate. I'm joining you today from Denina Athleta in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm a UA student, PhD student at UAF, and also one of the co-leads for the Early Career Forum. The Early Career Forum was formed a few years ago, and it was a goal to have a space for anyone wishing to connect with the early career community. We encourage sharing of information, news, and events relevant to early career development, and to continue to foster those connections that IARPC does so well. So there are currently 4 team leads, myself, Kelsey Aho, Chelsea Wagner-Koch, and Angela Bliss. If you are an early career researcher and you're interested in learning more about this or potentially joining us, we are going to be circulating through some new leaders. So please reach out if you're interested. Next slide, please, Liz. So the purpose when this was created was to provide a forum and collaboration space for those who would self-identify as early career researchers or ECRs. And we really want to try to facilitate that connection for early career researchers within the broader IARPC collaborations group. So some of the goals that we've had and continue to have are to discuss with other collaboration teams on how to increase engagement and participation for ECR members across the board, increase visibility of early career researchers throughout IARPC, and provide meaningful resources and opportunities for early career researchers on the IARPC collaborations platform. The Early Career Forum has also worked very closely with US APEX to connect early career researchers with relevant information on both platforms. So we started an early career newsletter this year and are planning some different webinars that focus on field experiences during the pandemic. So if you are interested and are an early career researcher, please consider joining that forum. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. So now I'm going to hand it over to the first of our agencies, which is NASA. So we have Thorsten Marcus with us today. Thorsten, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I have 5 minutes, so let me jump right in. And I appreciate this event because I remember how confusing it can be to be an early career scientist. And NASA is a research agency, so taking care of our early career researchers is very important. Let's go to the next slide. So we have several programs that are fostering early career scientists. One is our postdoc program. We have, this is a competitive program. We have deadlines 3 times a year, and it's US as well as international scientists can apply. And this is when you do research at a NASA center or at a NASA affiliated research institute like JPL. You as a scientist write a proposal, you work together with an advisor at one of these NASA centers, and those are 1 to 3 year projects. I think the salary is still $36,000 a year. The kicker here though is that your travel budget is I think $8,000 or $10,000 a year. So this is there so that you can make, connections within the community. You can decide to work for, a couple of months at a different, research institute to broaden your network, to work with other scientists. So, and lots of people who are in the community now went through NASA's postdoc program. If you go to the next slide, we have another competitive program, which is solicited via ROSES, Research Opportunities in Earth and Space Sciences. That solicitation comes out every 3 years, and the next solicitation is expected to come out in 2023. So in general, an early career scientist is defined as having obtained a PhD degree within 5 years. As a matter of fact, I think they changed it to 6 years. And this is a fun opportunity. This is a single PI proposal call where there's only one essential member on this proposal, the early career scientist. And if you have a great idea, if you have something that you always wanted to explore, investigate, this is a fun call to apply to. It's competitive, but the selection rates are not that bad. The average award size is roughly $125,000 per year for your salary. If you go to the next slide, I'm just rattling through because you have lots of opportunities here for our early career scientists. This is a student program. It's called Future Investigators in NASA Earth and Space Sciences and Technology Finest. It was formerly known as the NASA Earth and Space Science Fellowship. And again, this is a very open call. You can basically propose whatever you want to propose, as long as it's relevant to, to NASA's mission. The grants are up to $50,000 a year for a student assigned to that project. The way this works is that it's normally your professor who is the PI and who will get the grant, and the graduate student researcher, in this case, is called the future investigator. And that's important to note, that the finest is a grant to the professor and not a fellowship program that the student applies to. And that has some technical implications, so please keep that in mind, because sometimes people confuse that. So you're asked to work with your professor on that proposal. The professor will submit the proposal, and you are in that opportunity the future investigator. This comes out, this proposal call comes out annually. If you go to the next slide, please. We also, if you're interested in airborne research programs, we have a program where you can participate for 8 weeks in airborne, NASA airborne campaigns. The website, the link is at the top as well, and applications are typically due in January. So if you're interested in learning how to operate instruments on an aircraft campaign, how aircraft campaigns are conducted, etc., this is a fun summer program where you can, participate in flights in, at times exotic places. And if you go to the next slide. And we have lots of internship programs. So the link to our internship programs are here. Some are for undergraduates, some are for graduate students, some are for international scientists. So lots of programs there. And for example, I was at Goddard for many years. We have a 10-week internships at Goddard. And in summer, Goddard, at times looks more like a university than a research center. And very often people who went through this internship program stay in the field. So there's quite similar to NPP, there are quite a few professionals now who are now who went through this the student program. If you go to the next slide, just some practical advices for proposals. So ROSES is our annual call for proposals. And, look at the ROSES opportunities in your discipline, as well as cross-disciplinary opportunities. And there are also opportunities in other grant opportunities around in ROSES. So play around, look at it, and see what's up there. There are certain opportunities reserved for minority-serving institutions, for historically Black colleges and universities, etc. So, and then learn how to read the solicitation and ask for help. Please ask, the program manager responsible for these calls for help. We are really there to help you and to make it as easy for you as we can. Please never hesitate to bother any one of us with questions. And finally, consider serving on a proposal review panel. I'm trying to balance my panels, have a good balance between early career and senior career, mid-career scientists, because everyone brings something different to the table. And I think for early career scientists, it's especially useful because you learn how people perceive proposals, what is seen as good and what is seen as not so good. And you read so many proposals that you get good ideas how to frame your science objective, how to frame your hypothesis best. So please, contact, your program manager if you're willing to be on a review panel. Nowadays, it's also easier because they are virtual, so it makes, traveling, well, there's no travel involved anymore. And I think that's all I really wanted to say because I only have 5 minutes. So as I said before, we are serving you. So please, please, please talk to us with any questions, concerns, issues, etc. My email is down here. If there's somebody else who would address your question better, I can then relay your question to the appropriate person here at NASA. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Torsten, and thank you for pushing that all in a very short amount of time. And also, I put this in the chat, but for folks who are taking notes, the slide deck is posted on the event page on IARPC Collaborations. I put the link to it in the chat as well. So please don't feel like you have to try to write down everything that our presenters are saying in their 5 minutes. The resource is there for you. So next up, we have Dee Williams from the U.S. Geological Survey. Dee, go ahead.
Thank you, Liz. Hi, everyone. My name is Dee Williams. I am Deputy Regional Director for USGS Science in Alaska. And for the past 20 years, I've worked as a scientist administrator of science programs and policies for the Department of the Interior. But I am not a career counselor or HR specialist, so I do not frequently discuss the topic of career development. But I do have some specific messages to share with you all that I would want to hear about if I were in your shoes. Next slide. First, why work as a scientist for the federal government? The United States federal government is arguably the most influential and stable single institution on the planet. That makes it alluring as a place of employment and career choice for those who aspire to align themselves with great achievements. Every day, I get to do something that is both intellectually stimulating and socially impactful. Next slide. So, next question, why work for the Department of Interior? DOI is the steward of the nation's public lands, including national parks and national wildlife refuges. And it is the largest landowner in Alaska and the US Arctic, with responsibilities for the conservation and management of fish, wildlife, and their supporting habitat. Scientists at DOI are thus uniquely positioned to help manage, conserve, and influence the wise use of the nation's natural resources. Next slide. USGS is the lead science agency for the Department of Interior, and because of our mission, most of the science work occurs in geology, hydrology, ecology, and geography. But there is increasing focus on cross-disciplinary integrated science, so that creates opportunities in many additional fields. There is currently a lot of recruitment underway. So we are looking for talented and committed people who can be passionate about their work, and there is a space and place for you if you can be persistent in the application process, because it is highly competitive. Next slide. So what programs are in place to help students transition from school to employment? There are numerous programs, internships, and employment openings that begin with high school and college undergraduates and extend through graduate school and postdoc phases of training. USGS provides half-day workshops on these opportunities at various times throughout the year. And we also provide onboarding webinars at various times. So one key website worth a visit is there in the middle of the screen, usgs.gov/education. because it provides many links to the wide variety of programs already in place for students, including, next slide. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key arenas by which students can transition into careers. The Pathways Internship Program provides temporary assignments for students from high school through graduate school, allowing for flexible work schedules and conversion to full-time employment upon graduation. Next slide. The current administration is very interested in expanding diversity goals in the sciences, and in keeping with that policy guidance, USGS has created several new pipeline programs that allow for more direct recruitment from minority serving institutions. So for example, in Alaska Pacific University here in Anchorage and the Alaska Native Science and Engineering program are available as institutions worthy of the pipeline program, which means that students can apply with a faculty nomination and be considered for selection for specific jobs without broad public competition for those positions. Next slide. Let's see, this is the NSF, so we've skipped somehow. NSF Graduate Internship Program leverages NSF funds for placement at USGS for 6-month internship assignments. And I can tell you, for example, 120 placements have occurred over the last 5 years. Next slide. And finally, for postdocs, USGS typically hires up to 30 positions each year for 2-year appointments through the Mendenhall postdoc program. And these are highly competitive, but also very promising paths of career access because they often lead to full-time employment at the agency. So those are the highlights. And if you have specific questions, I'm happy to take them. I gave you my email contact information on the first slide, and also the USGS program called Youth and Education in Science is the responsible component within our bureau to promote and try to facilitate student placements. Okay, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Dee. I am now going to pull my slides down so that Bill Fitzhugh from Smithsonian can share some information. So, Bill, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Liz. Yeah, I'm Bill Fitzhugh from Smithsonian. I'm an archaeologist and an anthropologist. I work in the National Museum of Natural History. We have an office in Alaska, in Anchorage, at the Anchorage Museum, run by Aaron Kroll and Dawn Biddison, and some of you are maybe familiar with their work, and I want to highlight their opportunities in their office as well. Most of you are probably familiar with the Smithsonian in one way or another. At the moment, we have just today starting the Smithsonian Folklife Festival out on the mall right outside my window here. It's a great opportunity to share traditions and culture around the world. The Smithsonian is composed of a big assemblage of museums and research centers, natural history being one, air and space. We have the American History Museum, we have the Portrait Gallery, we have the National Zoo, we have, outfits in New York and then Panama research centers, biological research centers. So it's a very, very broad institution, and virtually all of those museums and study and research centers have their own opportunities for students, starting with internships for undergrads and even people who don't have an affiliation. They can apply for. There are probably thousands of internships opportunities, and it was impossible for me to kind of list them all because each of the museums and outfits have their own opportunities which you can access through the general Smithsonian fellowships and interns office. And there's a very, very good, listing of all the opportunities. And they even have a listing for jobs opportunities at the Smithsonian, which would be for the upper level, people with their PhDs and so forth. So it's, the grad fellowships or the undergraduate fellowships are often fairly informal, and you team up with a researcher to work on a problem that maybe you have identified, and you found a person at the institution who'd like to work with you. They can be fairly unstructured. And then we have a pre-doc and a postdoc, programs for fellowships, and they are usually one-year fellowships, but they could be shorter. And a couple of the postdocs are also multi-year, two or 3 year postdocs. So they're very, very highly competitive. And you apply through the Smithsonian fellowships and intern office. It's they give a lot of guidance for you on that website. It leads you everywhere in the Smithsonian. There are also senior postdocs that are available for senior scientists. Very few of those. We publish a newsletter at the Arctic Studies Center, and I usually have 2 or 3 people who help with the development of that newsletter. That's more like an internship opportunity. We have youth engagement programs. Most of the museums and centers have youth engagement programs for summer kids. It's probably too late to be applying for that kind of stuff now. And we also have several of the institutions have programs for Indigenous people who would be applying for various levels of work, but with a specialization in opportunities for Indigenous folks. Anchorage is fairly accessible to a lot of you, and I want to just again mention that Aaron Kroll and Dawn are involved in a lot of activities in Alaska, educational as well as research activities, and you may want to get in touch with either of them if you're interested in opportunities and programs in their offices. I think that's about all I really could say, other than just to point you towards the Smithsonian. It's it's a terrific institution with, within natural history, we operate from mineral sciences to anthropology to botany to zoology, and the art museums cover art around the world and as well as in North America. And the zoo programs are all over the place too. Getting jobs is a difficult part of this, this presentation. We don't have a real program for job seekers. I mean, we have a jobs Smithsonian listing that is always ongoing, and you can look there for positions. But as you might imagine, the opportunities for fellowships and internships are much more accessible than the rare jobs. It's fairly unusual for people to leave the Smithsonian except in a casket or other ways. It's a wonderful job to be working here, so we don't have a big turnover. But we do enjoy working with young people, and we team up with universities. And if you have a particular interest in a field, psych out, from the Smithsonian information on the web, what museum and what person would be, the person you'd like to work with. And as you heard with NASA and the other programs here, it's absolutely all right to be talking directly to any of the individuals, any of the curators or others. And we encourage you to do that. And very often we're able to work out projects or refer you in other directions where you might find some opportunities as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm going to put the slides back up and hand it to Sally McFarland, who's going to be speaking to Department of Energy opportunities. Sally, go ahead.
Thank you, Liz. So I'm Sally McFarlane. I'm a program manager in the Biological and Environmental Research Office within the DOE Office of Science. And today I'm just going to talk about early career opportunities within DOE Office of Science, but there are opportunities in other offices, such as our Renewable Energy Office. Next slide, please. So within Office of Science, we have an office. We have a lot of offices. So an office within Office of Science that focuses on workforce development for teachers and students. So that's where most of our student programs are run out of. And so the mission of that office is to help ensure a pipeline of highly skilled and diverse science, technology, engineering, and mathematics workers. And so they have run programs, both undergraduate internships and visiting faculty programs at the DOE laboratories. There's also a graduate fellowship program at the DOE laboratories. And there's a fellowship for K through 12 teachers as well. And then there's also middle school and high school science competitions and a national science bowl. So opportunities for K through 12 as well as undergraduate and graduate students. Next slide, please. So on the undergraduate side, the program we have is called SULI, or Science Undergraduate Laboratory Internships. And this provides opportunities for undergraduate students to spend time at one of the DOE national laboratories, performing research under the guidance of a DOE scientist or a national lab scientist. And this program solicits applications 3 times a year, and appointments are either 10 or 16 weeks in duration. Next slide. Similarly, there's a similar program for graduate students, which is our graduate student research program. And again, it provides opportunities for students to conduct research at the national laboratories. And so for the graduate student program, you have to be starting to work on your dissertation. So you have to be past your initial qualifications. But you can pursue your graduate thesis research working at a DOE laboratory, again, with a collaborating DOE scientist. And for these graduate student fellowships, they can be from 3 to 12 months of working at the DOE lab. These programs have 2 solicitations per year, and they're in the different Office of Science priority research areas. So some relevant examples from the last solicitation included topics in data science, geosciences, environmental system science, atmospheric research, and climate modeling. And the next solicitation for this program is in November. The next slide. And then, excuse me, my last slide is about the early career research program. So this is a competitive grant program for early career researchers at either universities or national lab staff. So for university applicants, you have to be an untenured but tenure track professor at a US academic institution. And these are, like I said, a competitive grant program. The university awards are $150K a year for 5 years. So it's a nice start to your research career. Again, the research topics fall within one of the Office of Science program offices. And these priority research topics may vary from year to year. The solicitation for this program is, this year's solicitation is not out yet, but it's generally released in late summer. And I did not include a slide on postdoc opportunities because DOE doesn't run a postdoc program itself, but each of the 17 national laboratories in the DOE system do have substantial postdoc programs. Some of them have fellowships and some of them just have postdoc opportunities. And so you can go to the websites for each of the national labs and see the opportunities they have available. And many postdocs at national labs do go on to become staff scientists of the national labs. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally. And we're now going to move on to the Coast Guard. So Shalane Regan is going to talk a little bit about these opportunities. Shalane, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi there. So I'm Shalane Regan. I am the Coast Guard's Research and Development Center's Polar Regions Technology Evaluation Coordinator. It's a mouthful. I'm sorry. And so I'm going to just kind of walk you through a little bit about the Coast Guard Research and Development Center. Most people don't know we exist. Coast Guard is under DHS, not DOD, which is another kind of novel fact for a lot of people. And so next slide, please. So in our technical division, we have 7 branches. Most of them align with Coast Guard missions. So aviation, the surface fleet, but we also do C5I, which is a lot of comms and different systems in that nature, versus we also have an IT and networks branch, and then environmental and waterways, a modeling, simulation and analysis branch, which is a lot of like operations research. And then our Science and Technology Innovation Center is a partnership with DHS, focusing on rapid transition technologies. And so within these branches, we cover a variety of different research areas, as you can see underneath each of them. To the side there, we've got a couple pulled out, unmanned systems, polar research, space-based technologies, high latitude comms is a big one for us right now. Next slide, please. So a little bit about my project. Basically, we're slowly transitioning it. It currently is focused on putting research in the polar regions on one of our icebreakers, whether it's Healy or Polar Star. But we're looking to build more research in-house for this project. And so focusing on the different groups I talked about before, unmanned systems. We've done a little bit of everything. Last year we had a hydroponic garden, which was kind of cool, up on the icebreaker when it was down in the Antarctic. So they were without fresh food for a little while. That was kind of fun. Next slide, please. So research with us, there's a bunch of different opportunities. Specifically within PRTE is underway research, as I mentioned. We also work ashore in Alaska. We'll travel into the West and East Arctic and down to Antarctica. Next slide, please. In terms of working at the Research and Development Center, we don't have necessarily a early career research track. We do have internship opportunities. These are 3 of the primary networks that we work with for recruiting. Recruiting interns. This summer we had 4 from the DHS HS Powers internship program, but that's about it in terms of internship. Next slide, please. When it comes to career and employment opportunities, everything is done through USA Jobs. The Research and Development Center is located in New London, Connecticut, near the Groton subbase, if you're familiar with Groton, Connecticut. And so our positions are a range of technical fields, engineering technicians, research physical scientists, operation research analysts, and then IT specialists. A lot of our positions are ladder positions and start in different places, whether it's an 11, 12, 13, or it can start as low as a 7, depending on the position and what we need at the time. But that is primarily how you work with the RDC, similar to the Smithsonian. Jobs come and go. Sometimes we have higher openings than not. Our workforce is transitioning right now, and a younger force is coming in. So we've got more openings than we have had in the past. And so next slide, please. It's my contact information if you'd like to reach out or have questions. Our project portfolio is also available online in case you're interested to see where we're working right now. We usually have an active 45 to 50 projects. And so, yeah, that's all I got. Try to keep it short.
Thank you so much for that overview of Coast Guard opportunities. And our last presentation is going to be by Erica Hill from the National Science Foundation. And yeah, after that, we'll have time for Q&A. So feel free to start putting questions in the chat or thinking about them. And Erica, go ahead.
Thanks so much. So I'm here representing the National Science Foundation, specifically the Arctic section, which is in the Office of Polar Programs. We work closely with folks on the other side of the office, Antarctic, but my discussion today is going to focus on Arctic opportunities. Next slide, please. So who we are, we have in the past had as much as 8.5 billion in funding, but as many of you might know, NSF is expanding. We have a new directorate on technology that is Really, we're excited about those new opportunities. But we are an independent agency, and we fund all branches of science except for medical and clinical. So medical and clinical is your thing, then consider NIH, National Institutes of Health. But just about everything else, there is a home for it at NSF. Here is just a short list of some of the things that we do in the Arctic section. It's certainly not an exhaustive list, but recently we're really interested in natural hazards research, so things like landslides, glaciology and permafrost. We fund a lot of that in polar programs. My own program, Social Sciences, focuses on archaeology and ethnography, but we also fund economics, public health, language studies, all kinds of projects in any field of social science. We do paleoclimatology and anything related to climate change processes and impacts. One thing that distinguishes NSF from some of the other agencies that have been presenting here is that NSF does not conduct the research ourselves. So while a lot of other agencies have both opportunities for students and grant programs, as well as conduct research in-house, NSF does not conduct research in-house. However, the entire staff is comprised of people who have PhDs in the fields of study for the programs that they run. Next slide, please. Okay, so Polar Programs is the only NSF unit with a geographic focus. And as I said, we fund disciplinary, multidisciplinary, and convergent research. So you've probably read a lot about how so much research we're interested in convergent approaches to understanding problems and solutions. But NSF also funds relatively narrowly focused disciplinary research because we understand that the fundamental research is just as essential as the larger scale convergent work. So don't be afraid to pitch those disciplinary focused kinds of projects. As I said, the Arctic section funds all aspects of Arctic science, and there's a lot of overlap in our programs. We have dedicated programs to systems science, social sciences, observing, and natural sciences. And if you have a project that might overlap with one or more of these, it's okay to just reach out to a program officer and ask. As Thorsten said, we're really interested in you just getting in contact with us. If I'm not the person who can answer your question, then we'll find the person who is. All of the program officers in Arctic work really closely with each other. And we always try to find the best fit for your particular project. And in some cases, it may not even be the Arctic program, might be another program at NSF, and that's okay. But reach out to us. We also have a specific arm dedicated to logistical support, especially for remote work in, say, Alaska, on the Arctic, on a Greenland ice sheet, and various other areas. So we have a whole additional pool of money that can help you get where you need to get in order to do the research that you want to do. Next slide, please. So a couple of specific early career research opportunities. First off is the dissertation awards. And this gives you up to $40,000 to spend on your research. So might be travel, might be conducting sample analysis, might be to buy a new computer and software, and then an indirect cost on top of that. So dissertation awards. We also have a postdoc fellowship program. And actually the Geosciences Directorate, where OPP lives, has programs in atmospheric sciences, in oceanography, in earth sciences, and in polar programs. So there's a really large, there are a lot of opportunities for postdoc fellowships. These are 2 years of salary and a research allowance. And they allow you to, we're interested not just in folks who have worked in the Arctic, but also people who may be interested in getting into Arctic research. So maybe you've worked elsewhere in the world, but you've got an interesting question that maybe an Arctic data set could answer. You could potentially be supported by the OPP postdoc fellowship program. And that is for folks who have no more than 24 months of full-time work after receiving their PhD. So you could be several years out and still be eligible for a postdoc as long as you don't have full-time work in a PhD level position. And then we have our faculty early career development program. This is a 5-year program that provides you with opportunities for really kicking off a productive research career. And these are very prestigious, but we would love to see more applications for this program. I think folks are intimidated because they hear it is prestigious, but the only way to get one is to apply for one. And the first step is reaching out to a program officer. Next slide, Liz. So here's just a quick overview of some of our opportunities. So if you do have a position at a university and you do want to consider applying to NSF, then here are some of the basic other opportunities that we have. And most obvious is the standard research grant, which is up to 5 years. And that can cover any field of Arctic science. We have planning grants that allow you to develop collaborative relationships, say with Alaska communities, for example. They can get you out there, give you the travel funds to get out to remote locations and start collaborations. We have rapid response research, and this we funded a lot of work on COVID. We have also funded a lot of work on archaeology, where we have archaeological sites that are in danger of eroding into the Bering Sea, and we need to quickly get out there and do some salvage archaeology. We have exploratory research that is high risk. This is the kind of work where you may not actually know whether or not an idea works or a hypothesis is just sort of out there, but might really be an interesting project. We can fund that sometimes. Conferences and workshops and research coordination networks. More information on all of these on the NSF website. Next slide, Liz. Finally, get in touch. Again, can't say this enough times. If I'm not the right person to reach out to, I'll connect you with this person who is. Our general solicitation is right there on the screen, 21-526. That's our general solicitation for Arctic research opportunities. It's the big sort of general information about applying to NSF. But if you have questions about it or want to talk about a specific program, just get in touch. Thanks, Liz. That's all for me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erica. And thank you again to all of our presenters and to all of the early career researchers here for listening. So we now have time for Q&A. This is pretty much an unprecedented opportunity in terms of how many different agency folks we have in a room together. So I really encourage folks to ask questions. Nothing is too specific or too broad. I'm also, while people are either putting your questions in the chat or thinking about them, so you can raise your hand, I have some links from a couple of the Arctic specific agencies that weren't able to join us today. So first I'll put the link for NOAA opportunities, and then I have a few passed along from Department of Defense. So from Navy is coming to you now, and then Air Force next. And finally, DARPA. So those are all links for the different agencies that weren't able to join us today. So if you're really interested in working with NOAA or interested in working with one of the Department of Defense agencies, definitely check out those websites. And if you want to talk to someone more, let me know. I'll help connect you. But yeah, someone please ask a question. Great. So I see one in the chat that just came in just a smidge first. So for NASA and NSF, would a graduate student be eligible to help review career or similar early faculty level grant proposals? So Torsten or Erica?
Yeah, so for our review panels, we require PhDs so that you have finished your education. So yeah, as a graduate student, you cannot yet be on a panel.
Yep, that would be the same case for NSF.
Thank you. Jessica, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the NSF planning grants and some of the research coordination network grants. Are those rolling? Are those specific through Arctic? Are they more general through all NSF?
Yeah, so planning grants are simply a type of grant, and just most programs at NSF will entertain planning grants. They are by invitation only. So you need to start by reaching out to a program officer and pitching your idea. Planning grants need to be need to adhere pretty closely to a set of requirements. So usually when I'm doing a planning grant, I like to meet with a PI a couple times to make sure that we're on the same page and that a planning grant is the right mechanism. And those are specifically for developing collaborations, for example, in Alaska. The research coordination networks is also a type of award. And again, many, but not all programs will consider RCNs. Those are awards that provide opportunities to get entire communities or establish communities or bring together communities of researchers to address a specific issue or theme or gap in science. And I'd be happy to talk to you about both of them. I will drop links to those, to at least to the RCN solicitation in the chat box.
Thanks.
Thanks, Erica. We've gotten a couple questions in the chat. Susanna, I'm going to split your questions into two. So the first of those is whether any of these agencies have opportunities to join in on research if we're not generating our own proposals. So I'll hand that to any agency that wishes to answer that.
I guess I would say there are, I mean, certainly opportunities to collaborate with our research scientists at the national laboratories. So you could always reach out to them about activities. I mean, we have the visiting faculty, DOE has the visiting faculty program if you're a faculty. But we don't have any programs that I know of that are not proposal driven.
So for NASA, so as I said, we have the internships where you can, be part of, during the summer, be part, or also during other parts of the year, be part of NASA research. The other possibility is we, at least at Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, we work a lot with the universities that are, around in this area, whether it's Howard University, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And so because we have relationships with professors there, we very often have students work in our at NASA as a research assistant, working on an hourly basis on research projects.
Dee, I'm wondering, does USGS have a similar system where, some folks work as field scientists, not necessarily on their own proposals, but as field support?
Sure, we have, but those are generally filled by positions already employed within the Bureau. I take the question here to be how to network to join research opportunities as like a pickup kind of arrangement through networking. And that can certainly happen, but it depends on, the strength of your network, I guess. You have to be aware and be out there in a way that people would be aware of your availability and your expertise. So part of it is just developing a network that becomes a productive network for you, which takes some time and some investment, I guess. But I can't think of an easy answer by which one would make themselves available except through bulletin boards. I mean, the IARPC collaboration teams are a perfect example of ways that one could circulate and make your expertise known and keep your ear to the ground about emerging opportunities. The person asking the question is a social scientist, and I can just share, you know, I'm an anthropologist by training, and there are very much increasing opportunities for interdisciplinary and social components for what used to be very traditional disciplinary arrangements. So the field is opening up. So I would encourage you to, you know, that there's opportunity for that, but doing random pickups is not likely to be the most productive way to pursue that.
Yeah, I might follow up on that a little bit too. Just, you know, I'd like to emphasize the importance of getting Indigenous people into these roles at various levels. And there are a lot of opportunities for younger people to get involved in research programs across the federal government dealing with climate change or observations of nature changing, you know, the sort of field observations of what's going on and so forth. And it's often hard to, you know, make contact with individuals in the communities. But, you know, I think all the agencies now are very intent on reaching down into the communities and trying to find ways to get the word out. We're hoping to establish some educational opportunities in Anchorage through the Indigenous engagement position that's there now. And so I think, you know, we need more infrastructure to get the word out. And then as everybody sees here, the opportunities are widespread in the government, and it's particularly for Indigenous applicants.
Thank you, Bill. And Christina, I saw you had your hand up. Was that related to this question?
Yeah, hi. Christina Bonsall, I'm a marine ecologist with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management in Alaska. I'm joining this because I am I got my PhD less than 5 years ago, and I'm finding myself getting questions from friends and former colleagues about what opportunities are available, and I just want to be better informed. But I think I interpreted Susanna's question a little bit differently, because my mind immediately went to the permanent positions in the US government and research opportunities there if you are not in a position where you have to be writing proposals all the time. And maybe the US Coast Guard could provide additional insight to this, but in my position, I am able to join in research through specific types of funding agreements called cooperative agreements, where researchers outside our agency contribute their expertise to the project, and then I am able to contribute my expertise as well. And that's not what one may consider a traditional competitive proposal based situation. And I'm happy to talk more about that and answer questions afterwards or offline.
I'll chime in. She's right. We have a variety of other methods through the Coast Guard, at least to get involved in research. Being multidisciplinary, we're not pigeonholing people into certain roles, I guess. Our research is all done in a matrix kind of organization so that you can work across different fields. We do have CRADAs as well as MOUs and MOAs with a lot of the universities. We actually have our own Coast Guard auxiliary unit, which sounds kind of strange, but is a great way to get involved without having to fully commit. Happy to speak with somebody if they've got more specific questions about it.
Thank you. And I think that kind of gestured toward the second half of Susanna's question, which is interdisciplinary opportunities that are available within agencies. Erica, I know that's a big thing for NSF. Is that something you want to speak to briefly?
Multidisciplinary. Yeah, NSF is certainly very interested in multidisciplinary work, and that's why some of our Arctic science programs are very broad, such as Arctic system science. But all of our programs really facilitate multidisciplinary science. As a social scientist, I get multidisciplinary work proposed all the time, which is great, especially those kinds of projects that pull together social sciences and natural sciences, say stable isotope analysis and observational work or ethnographic work. So yeah, lots of different opportunities. Convergent work as well. And as I said, also basic, what we call the basic science, the fundamental questions. So do keep those kinds of things in mind though, because different agencies will have different sort of preferences for the kinds of science they do. Some are much more applied and some are much more what we would call basic science like NSF. But there's room for all kinds in the agency. It's just a matter of finding the right fit for you. And, attending these kinds of chats and opportunities are really a good way to go. I would also suggest checking out ARCUS, the ARCUS website, ARCUS. Yeah, thanks, Liz. It's a good networking, another good way to network and stay apprised of what's going on in Arctic science, especially in Alaska.
Thanks, Erica. Are there any other agency representatives who want to speak to interdisciplinary opportunities before I move on to the next question? All right, so the next question that I'm seeing in the chat is from PJ asking whether there will be upcoming science or climate change positions in Alaska or the greater Arctic in the next 12 to 18 months. I suspect the answer is yes.
I can say the Coast Guard is definitely building in Anchorage their Arctic team, for lack of a better term. It doesn't have a specific, some of the work is science, some of it's not, it's more operational. And separate, the Ted Stevens Center has been stood up in Anchorage as well, and they are focused on Arctic and are hiring lots of different people. If you watch the USA Jobs, a lot of this will come through there. You can set up saved searches if you're not familiar with the site, so that it'll email you the next day when something comes out, whether you use a keyword or a location or an agency. And so that may be helpful.
And I believe USA Jobs runs trainings on how best to use the platform. So if you're interested in applying for federal jobs, I would look into that because it can be an overwhelming system. And there was a question in the chat that I think that answered, but I'll just review it real quick. Is Erin was wondering how to get involved in proposal review panels. And Erica's answer was contact Erica. And Sally's answer was very similar, which was, reach out to whoever the program manager is at the agency you're interested in. I think my sense is that people are always looking for reviewers. Erica?
Yeah, let me also add to that. If you send us a proposal, we're going to ask you to review sooner or later because we figure you've just signed up for that. But the other thing is publish. When we look for reviewers, we look to see who is publishing, who is doing current work on the topic. So the more you get your name out there, the more that you participate in, you publish, you participate in conferences, and we see your name, the more likely we are to recognize you. But it's also certainly fine just to reach out by email and say, hey, I'm interested in this. Yep.
You can also, I don't know, what your career stage is. If you're a postdoc and you're working with a senior scientist, you can let them know you're interested in reviewing and for them to pass your name on. If a program manager contacts you, we often ask senior scientists, can you recommend reviewers that we don't know, or that are early career folks that we might not be aware of. So that's another avenue for people to get their names out there as potential reviewers.
Hey, Liz, it occurs to me to maybe share a tip in thinking about the previous discussion about, the complications of applying for federal jobs, and people who are not well experienced in that may often get, screened out of federal applications. And so I would encourage everybody who is taking the time to apply to be sure to cross-reference your resume with the keywords of the job recruitment language, and edit your resume so that the HR specialist who's reviewing your application materials can see that you are meeting the criterion of the announcement, because people get screened out and are often befuddled why they're interpreted not to have the necessary qualifications. So the burden is on the applicant to make it clear how your resume and experience match up in alignment with the language of the recruitment notice. So I think that's a step worth taking for everybody as they apply.
Just to echo that, the block says something like that 5,000 characters. Use them all. The hiring panels are not allowed to infer any information in the resume that we received. So use it to your advantage. Tell them your story. The more you put, the more that they know, the more you have a chance of getting through.
Thank you. Those are really good tips. Got a question from Alexandra in the chat. For those of us who may not have PhDs but want to join the Arctic research workforce, what steps or opportunities do you recommend?
I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't have a PhD. I'm working in the Arctic realm. For the Coast Guard, it just depends on the position, but PhDs are not required. We do have PhDs in the office. I think that's the same for a lot of the DoD labs as well. And so Erica mentioned down below that there are a lot of opportunities that don't. And so don't feel discouraged, I guess. Just gotta keep an eye out.
And I can add to that Arctic research requires support. They require people to help on communications, logistics. We have people who, coordinate things like transportation and getting people to an ice sheet, or getting people out to remote locations in Alaska or on a ship. All of those kinds of jobs make Arctic research possible. So, if you don't have a mechanical engineer on or somebody on your ship who knows what the heck's going on, your ship isn't going anywhere and research isn't going to happen. So all of those support activities can get you into Arctic research and supporting it, although maybe you're not a researcher. There's lots of ways to be involved in ways that don't require a PhD.
On that note, I will also just put a plug in for science communication and/or science policy work. I don't even have a traditional science background. I have a master's in creative writing. So you can definitely get into Arctic research without having a PhD or even necessarily a specific science degree. There's lots of space for people who are interested in getting involved. Those are all of the questions that I see in the chat. We do have time if folks have other questions. I'll give another minute or two for anyone who's actively typing, or you can use the raise hand. Christina put the link to Polar Field Services, I think, which is one of the logistics contractors. Bill, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. You can go the other direction too. I mean, if you've got a science degree, you can use that for educational and media activities. I mean, one of the big gaps we have in the system is translating research into information for the public and indigenous communities and so on. So if you're a good writer and you had, some interest in things that way, that's there's a real need for those kind of skills.
Hey, I was just going to add the perspective that with regard to a master's versus PhD, federal government tends to be a good employer for those circumstances, unlike the academy where a PhD is pretty much an expected credential. That's not true in federal government, and the application, in fact, is looking for experiential qualities and not educational certificates or titles. So I think once you work in the federal government, you realize that many people are not even aware who is a PhD and who is not. It's not the same culture in the federal government as it is in the university.
I would also add that maybe there's a lot of jobs that people don't think about in private companies, consulting companies, and a lot of other types of companies where they need people who have some expertise in the area, but you don't have to have a PhD. So I think sometimes thinking outside the box into other avenues, which can be hard sometimes in the university environment to know about what other opportunities are out there. But there's a lot of consulting companies, climate companies, weather companies, etc. So that's another possibility.
I'm going to ask sort of last call for our agency representatives. Any final notes for folks? Hearing none, I will thank all of our speakers for taking the time to talk about opportunities in your agencies. And I'll thank all of you who joined us for the presentation. I am going to post the recording, if not later today, then by the end of the week. So you'll be able to see it and share it with others who, if missed it. I know we are kind of overlapped with field season here. So feel free to refer to this in the future. And if you have questions that you think of later, feel free to pass them along to me and I'll see what I can do to help. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.